Hi, everybody. How are you doing? It's nice to be back with all of you. I can't see who we have in the room today for some reason. It's not letting me see your names. Um, I can I can see I can see Anna and I can see Lynn, but I can't see everyone else for some reason. If you guys want to say hello in the chat, it would be great to know who we've got and where everybody's sort of in here from. We're just going to probably have a little bit of a slow start just so that people can join because I'm doing it at a different time to my kind of normal slot. Hi, Lynn. Morning from SoCal. I bet you've got nice weather there. I'm in London, obviously, for those of you who probably know. And it's actually surprisingly warm for October. But I just got back from Paris last night and I've got a couple of interesting definitely a mixed bag of stories to share from that trip. Hi Patty from Wisconsin. Lovely to have you here. I've actually been to Wisconsin once because I've got family there. So when I was much younger. Um, Obviously today we're going to be talking about how to create and invite kind of serendipitous connections into our lives. And so it's interesting when I think about this topic, I sort of have mixed feelings about whether I feel that things are supposed to happen to us, or whether we create opportunities. And if I'm being honest, I think it's a little bit of both. So I think on the one hand, I think that, yeah, there's definitely ways that we can kind of put ourselves out there and open ourselves to opportunities and also create opportunities based on how we show up, how we live our life, the spaces we choose to be in, and how we sort of move around in the world. So, for example, if you're kind of inside at home and not sort of going out much or doing a lot and you get your groceries delivered to your door, compared to, if you're out and about and you have plans and you sort of do social things and also put yourself in situations where you're meeting new people or, potentially going into environments where things are more likely to happen. That is, in my view, taking agency and creating that. And, it's difficult to know really, truly how much of that is kind of predetermined. Like, sometimes when we go to places where these things happen or we create these opportunities, is that because those things were already meant to be on our path or not? So that's kind of just something to think about and consider. And if you have sort of thoughts or views on this, please do share. And Lynn, it's 80 plus degrees. Wow. I don't know what that is in Celsius, but that sounds hot. Which bit of SoCal are you in? And are you near kind of water or a beach? Because if so, lucky you. So yeah, Paris. I mentioned this on my last live, which I don't know if any of you were on. I think one or two of you might have been, where I was supposed to go to Paris for a retreat hosted by Dr. Joe Dispenza. So I don't know if many of you are familiar with him, but his teachings very much revolve around how our kind of thoughts and our mindset and how our kind of emotional state can really influence and affect how our health kind of sort of transpires, things that manifest within our health and our wellness and well-being, but also we can use that kind of knowledge and understanding to actually heal ourselves from inside. So to give you an example, and it makes sense. So what he says, and I don't know all of the science behind it, but he basically says that when we're kind of stressed or, in negative emotional states, we put pressure on our body, on our immune system, on our cells, and actually we can activate things within our genes that then manifest as illnesses and, major health issues. However, if we're in a kind of more positive or neutral state of mind, that doesn't happen. So the examples he gives is like if you have some twins and a pair of twins, one of them can show or get, a particular illness or something, whereas the other one doesn't. And so what he says is that that's due to, they're both genetically identical, but it'll be other things in the environment, lifestyle, but also just on the inside internally, even if they're twins that, let's say, live together. Um, it's to do with the stress that we basically put on ourselves, and then how that activates certain genes to fire in ways that are not conducive to kind of, the best health and wellness. And he's also, he's had many instances in his teachings, where people who've kind of done his meditations and practiced and sort of, focused on getting themselves out of the repetitive, repeated negative emotional states, where they've then healed themselves somewhat, seemingly like miraculously. Although actually it's not, miraculous, it's sort of quite formulaic. And he does kind of brain scans and shows people how they can, um, I guess, harness that power, and how they can sort of like train their brains and rewire their brains to also, be sort of conducive to healing and, recovery and health. So ultimately, his whole focus is on, healing the body through the power of the mind, through the power of our emotions, how we think and feel. But the Paris government, we that's what I found out like recently. Apparently, the retreat got cancelled because the like health authorities or the Parisian government weren't happy with the French government, or French authorities weren't happy with his teachings and had concerns about that. And so 2,500 people were supposed to show up there and go to this retreat, and they're from all over the world, because it's the only retreat he's doing in Europe for quite a long time. And yeah, it just got cancelled like a couple of days before it was supposed to happen. So my sister and I still went to Paris because we had our tickets booked. We couldn't change them, and we just kind of had 4 days in Paris. And obviously that was lovely, and it was nice to kind of have a break. It wasn't sort of the way we'd planned to spend it or the kind of intention we had, but it was a nice time. And so the first thing that I was going to say is, someone asked me when I told them that this event was being cancelled, and it's someone I met through the kind of volunteering that I'm doing. And I told him, I was telling him about the retreat. He knew who Joe Dispenza was, and he thought that it was like really cool that I was going. And then I messaged him and I told him, I said, this has got cancelled and this is why. And he said, what's the gift in this for you? And obviously the gift was that I get to spend time with my sister. I get to kind of, have a little bit of a break and like a holiday, I guess. And, to have a change of scenery and not have to do like laundry or housework or whatever else life admin that I would be getting on with at home. And but also, I wasn't fully prepared for the retreat. I hadn't read the 530-page book that I had to read. I would have done by the time I got there, but there was a lot of prep and a lot of things that it required, and I'd done some of it and I hadn't done other bits. And so um yeah, so Saturday we went to Paris, got on the Eurostar, and that was like all very kind of convenient and comfortable. And for anyone who is in London, I feel like it's definitely easier to take the Eurostar than it is to fly. It's much more convenient, and you can get really good kind of deals and offers sometimes as well. Um, and the thing I was going to say was that we arrived there on Saturday and kind of had I mean, it almost feels like a blur, and I'm also very tired because as much as we had a nice time, the hotel we stayed in, we picked it because it was like 10 minutes walk from where the retreat, sort of the kind of conference venue would have been. So it was a good location, but the beds were kind of smaller than a single bed, and the pillows were quite lumpy. And I said to my for some reason my bed was like sloping, it wasn't even straight. And I said to my sister, I said, why does it feel, and I was laughing when I said this was the final night, and I said, why does it feel like this bed feels like a punishment rather than something that we've paid for. But it was, one of the things I could sort of notice is like, even in that moment where I'm like, oh, I'm so tired and I just would love to be in like a even semi comfortable bed right now, it's still having that kind of sense of humor and being able to laugh about the situation. And I think that's really important. um and then there was a few other stories that I was going to share. I got scammed, which I will share shortly. And then also I had a couple of like really lovely, really positive experiences where I experienced a lot of like kindness and generosity. And I think that also led to me being more susceptible to being scammed, because I just felt like other people had been so kind and so nice to me. And so when someone like asked me for help, which I, retrospectively, I'm almost certain was a scam, I felt more inclined to do the same. And I'll talk about that and how that made me feel, and also just what kind of the lessons there are as well. So yeah, that's kind of the nutshell, like intro version. What I wanted to take a moment to ask everybody who's here is, in your own lives, and this is an important exercise in terms of reflection, um, because what you focus on, you get more of. So when you think about, let's say, people always say, like, when you think about like a specific car, color, or model, you'll see more of that. So if we're thinking and talking about inviting serendipity and, like things that seem almost magical into our lives, um, what does that mean to you, and where and how have you experienced it before, or what would you like to experience? So if you guys want to put in the chat what that sort of means to you, and where that's come up for you, any stories that you have, and then I'll share a couple of examples myself as well. So I'm just looking up the definite the actual, like, dictionary definition of serendipity and where it originates from, so that we can, just while I wait for you guys to share some of your kind of serendipitous moments in the chat. But serendipity is an unplanned fortunate discovery, and where it originates from is that in 1754 a guy called Horace Walpole coined the word and described an amazing discovery as being of that kind which I call serendipity. So, and someone else called Robert K. Merton first came upon the concept and term of serendipity in the 1930s in the Oxford English Dictionary. So, it's basically unexpectedly finding something good, or something good kind of happening to you. And, like, one of the examples that's listed here is another notable example of serendipity is the discovery of penicillin. So, which I don't know if you guys know the story behind that, but it's definitely an interesting one. It was, discovered by accident. So, the first sort of serendipitous thing that I had happen was that I have like a separate wallet for travel, and I have a couple of cards that I only use when I'm abroad and stuff. Oh, Lynn, you're so sweet. This Insight Timer event. Happy to receive this positivity. Well, it's lovely to have you here. And thank you for taking the time to like hang out with me and listen. So I really appreciate that. And yeah, I hope it is serendipitous by the time we reach the end of it. Um, so I found, so I use a particular wallet. That there's a lot of interesting themes that have come up in this trip. So one of them is kind of kindness and generosity and meeting strangers. Another theme has been money, and sort of things have had a very circular nature in my view in this trip, and a lot of things have kind of come full circle for me. And then the third one is wallets or purses. So I'll get through all of those topics. But the first one was that I found there's a wallet that I use typically when I travel, and I keep like foreign currencies in there, and I keep cards that I only use when I'm abroad. And in the UK we have something called an EHIC, which is like a European health insurance card, which I think after Brexit, like if you still have one now, then it's going to be valid for a period of time. But I think after that, it might not be, or something. I'm not really sure on the details. But I had anyway, so I found that I remembered the night before I was leaving, I was like, oh, I need to like put this wallet in my bag. And then I looked through, and I had a couple of like Singapore dollars, a couple of US dollars, and I had like over $100 in euros, which I didn't remember that I had. And I hadn't been anywhere in Europe for like I think since last like August, so more than a year. And so that was a really lovely surprise, and that was really helpful, because I thought, oh, where I've just gone through redundancy, etc. Like I thought, oh, it's actually really nice to just have some extra cash that I didn't realize I had, especially since obviously, had I been going to the retreat, we would have been in the sessions most of the day, and quite busy, and things would have been like scheduled, and I wouldn't have been spending money really. But then obviously that changed, and I was just kind of going on a holiday that I hadn't planned to. So for those of you who've just joined, I was meant to go on Dr. Joe Dispenza's retreat in Paris, and it got cancelled. last minute due to the health authorities not really being super keen on his, like not being sure about his teachings and stuff. And he ultimately teaches you kind of how to heal yourself through mindset and energy and regulating your emotions and stuff. And I guess that's partly, we're all here because we believe in those things. But what he does differently to a lot of other people in this space is when he talks about healing or manifesting, he has done a lot of like brain scans that show actually how the pathways of your brain light up where like in motion rather than it being just like a static scan. And he also um looks at how our brains are wired, so which parts of the brain light up when we're thinking and feeling a certain way, and then the knock-on effect that has on our neurons, etc. So yeah, the kind of the point I was making is I was going to Paris unexpectedly on holiday, which I thought was going to be like a course or a retreat. So anyway, found this wallet the night before, and I was so thrilled. I was really happy that I found some cash, and that I didn't. It's funny because I didn't think of that as serendipity. I just thought of that as kind of luck, or like a nice, fortunate thing. But I hadn't actually properly looked up the definition of serendipity at that point. And then, so yeah, we went to the Eurostar, got there, and then we kind of had a bit of a walk around, and my sister wanted to do more of the kind of touristy stuff because she'd not really done all of it before. And for me, I'm pretty like flexible on that. I've been to Paris before. It was more just about having a nice time and seeing some of the sights, but also just like having time with my sister and having new experiences, and yeah, I guess like seeing some scenic things, walking around, eating good food. Um, and that's something that I'll also come on to as well because I love food. It's really important to me. I really love flavor, and if I'm generally speaking, if I'm gonna like pay to eat something that I've not like made, I want it to be something tasty or special or something that I possibly couldn't make myself. However, the nature of the trip and the way that timings and things planned out, I actually had a lot of meals on this trip that were mediocre or, were more about kind of nutrition and food as energy than like, flavor or great cuisine. And that was also a bit of a kind of interesting like learning for me to sort of be comfortable with that and be like, well, normally I would highly research everything, and I did try to, but there was just there's times where, certain times that week on weekdays, restaurants there are closed. A lot of them between like 2:30 and 7. So we had limited choices, and if we were in a rush or trying to go somewhere else, then it was just about where can we just get something quick. So yeah, I wish I'd had more great food in Paris. Although I had a few things that were good, and I did enjoy it. But there was honestly some things where I was like, I wish I hadn't bothered. But at the same time, once you've bought it, you're not gonna waste it. Because I absolutely do not waste food. To the best of my ability. And so the first night, so we kind of had a wander around. We went to this cocktail bar where and it's really cool. It's like one of the world's best cocktail bars, the world's top 100 cocktail bars, and they basically, and this was such an interesting concept to me. They travel to different places in the world every couple of months or so, or I don't know how often they do this, and they taste the flavors of that place, and then they come back and they create cocktails based on that country, and they're like named and themed and have a story around each one. So, and it's actually like like sort of published and printed in a really beautiful book. And that was a cool place. And the place they'd been to was India, and obviously I'm of an Indian kind of heritage. I'm born in London, but both my parents are Indian, although my dad was born and brought up in Tanzania and my mum in India. And they had like all these different interesting flavors, like things that I've sort of grown up with but in food, not in drink. And we tried a few things, and honestly some of them were like a bit too experimental for us, and um not great. But some of them, and I think the other problem is I'm not a big drinker, so I don't really like drinks that taste strongly of alcohol. And I think in a cocktail bar you're obviously going to get some that are for that kind of, for people who do like that. So yeah, but it was interesting to see kind of like flavors that we've grown up with and kind of cultural aspects. um reinvented in a new way. And although I think like we were the only people in there who were Indian, but anyway, or of Indian origin. And so we went there first, and then we went to another place nearby, which was like a shop and a kind of bar, I guess. And the that was funny enough. The guy who worked there was Irish. So you wouldn't really like. I had been to Paris before, but it felt more this time like it could have been London or New York because there was like a lot of people from other places, and everybody was kind of speaking English largely. And we went into a few places as well, which was more English being spoken than French. And that's kind of not the memory I have of Paris previously. And it could be that we were in a different area, but largely it just felt very like cosmopolitan, more so than I'd ever experienced before. Lynn, so you've just said you love French crepes and macarons. I didn't have a macaron this trip, and I didn't have a crepe this trip, but I did have some very good bread. I had some great cheese. That was the first thing that I ate when I was there. And it was so amazing, which I've never seen before. It was really thinly shaved. It was like shaved on one of those meat slices, and it was almost like slices of cheese that are so thin they melt in your mouth. It was fantastic. And the interesting thing is, I don't drink wine, and my sister doesn't eat cheese. She's vegetarian, but she just doesn't like cheese. She's not vegan, so she had wine and I had cheese. Um, but yeah, and we had some good croissants and pain au chocolat, obviously. But one thing, I don't know if you guys know Catherine Ramati, who's a teacher on here. She was raving about the chocolate mousse in Paris, and I didn't have any chocolate mousse while I was there, which is a shame. But I did bring back some chocolate. I brought back some cool flavors of Lindt. There's one that has like potato chips in it. There's one that has these kind of crispy biscuit things, and they always, for some reason, I know it's not French. Like I'm pretty sure it's is it Swiss? Is it from? Is I think Lindt is from Switzerland. Am I right? Does anyone know that? I'm gonna look it up. Um, let's see. But I think but in France, it's from Zurich in Switzerland. And in France, they always seem to have the really cool flavors. So like last time we went, there was a creme brulee flavor, and there was like this pistachio cream flavor that was delicious. But last time I went to Paris with my sister a couple of years back, we spent so much time in supermarkets just looking at all the different like snacks and all the different kind of chocolates and things, and we brought quite a lot home. But this time we spent a lot more time outside and actually um doing stuff. But I mean, I love, one of my favorite things when I go abroad is to go to a local supermarket, because I love seeing the kind of flavors and the products, and I feel like you get a good insight into kind of culture. But as someone who's interested in food and loves like ingredients and food, I just find it really enjoyable. um so where was I in this story? So then the second place we went to was this bar, and it was called like Cave de Vie or something like that, or like I don't know what it translated to exactly, but that this was the one owned by the Irish guy. And so I didn't first when I went there, I didn't realize that he owns it. I thought he just works there because he seemed quite young, and he was like late 20s. And he and basically they have some really interesting cocktails. So they have like one that was like a green, quite herbal kind of slush, and it's in a slushy machine. And then they put like micro herbs on it, but like really special, interesting, fancy micro herbs that I'd never heard of before. And he let us like taste all the micro herbs as well. And they had a different one that had like a ball of sorbet in it. So they just looked very cool, and they were really interesting. And then they also had like because it was like a shop as well, they sold a lot of like drinks and soft drinks and spirits and things like that. And so we tasted a few things as well, and they were like very generous with letting us try things. And even all the cocktails, they gave us like a little sample of each of them before we picked one each. And like I by that point I didn't really want to even I didn't want to be in like a loud or busy place. It was perfect, it was quiet, and we were like the only people in there for most of the time. There were people that had come briefly as well for like a quick drink while we were there, but we were just there, we're chatting to this guy Barney and then his colleague Jan, and they were both just really sweet and really like open and kind, and we just had a really good, like a really lovely time. It felt like being at someone's house almost, because it was very small and intimate. And then we found out later that actually Barney and his friend, another guy who's actually from the UK, they both co-own it, and it's very new, and it's kind of like that's the vibe that they want. They want it to feel like very hospitable, and I honestly felt like it was just such lovely hospitality. And for our first night in Paris, it just felt very kind of warm and sort of relaxed and just really lovely. And compared to, the bar we went in before, was they were really nice in there, but it was busy and it was quite loud. And we went in when it was quiet, but they were very popular. And obviously it's number 51 out of the world's 100 top bars. So I get like why that would be the case, but it was a very different vibe by the time we went to the second place. Also, the first one was very like dark and sexy, candlelit. The second place was like brighter and more homely. And it was like exposed brick walls, and just like it was a big table with like bar stools around it. So it's just a very different experience. And the there was a couple of interesting things that I had thought were very like sort of cute or funny. Although my sister laughs at every time I saw anywhere that did like food in Paris, which is every 2 seconds when you walk, there's like streets of, there's just so many restaurants. It was kind of insane. And I'd say, oh, this place looks interesting. This place looks interesting for like every place that we passed. And then whenever I saw any of the little cute shops, I'd always be like, oh, that place looks cute. And I was saying those two phrases like just throughout the trip, consistently. So where was I going with this? The second place we went in, the place with the nice people, Barney and Jan. So they, so I asked where the toilets were at one point, and he was like, "Oh, at the moment we've got it's very romantic in there," and we were like, "What? What does that mean?" And basically, he told us that their neighbors above had like a leak or something, and it was leaking into the light, so they've turned the lights off in there, and they've just used candles. And so I just thought that was a very sweet and funny way of describing, like, oh, the lights aren't working in there at the moment, and calling it a romantic toilet. And I've never had anyone describe a toilet as romantic before, but it really made me laugh. And obviously, several days later, this was on Saturday, it's now Wednesday, I'm still laughing about it. So anytime that you want your toilet to be romantic, just turn the lights off and light a candle. So yeah, it's kind of nice being able to like find the joy in things and find the silver lining. And yeah, we laughed a lot on that trip. Like my sister and I quite often have moments where we will laugh like loads. And I think I mentioned this on the last live that I did as well. And so that was the first thing. And one thing that he mentioned to us is he told us about the next day there was going to be a couple of pop-ups where some like bars and restaurants from New York and from Canada were doing pop-ups at like two other places. And so we decided that we would try and go to those, even though we didn't really know what to expect. There was very little information online, but we just thought, you know what, these people seem nice, they seem to have good taste, and like why, while we're in Paris, if it's things that are only literally on for one night and we're here, like why wouldn't we just try and experience it? So I'm just gonna check my microphone's connected. It is. So yeah, so basically then we went the next day on Sunday. We kind of did some of the sites, and then we went um to these two places that we had in mind. And the first place was like fine. It was sort of similar to like the vibe we had on Saturday night, where the first place was like just okay and the second one was like better. Um the service was a little bit, I would say, it wasn't anything to write home about. But yeah, we had a kind of decent time, and I had some really good food in that place, so that was great. And then the second place we went in, and there was like both of these pop-ups were kind of in partnership with each other. So they had like posters for the other one in each other's venues as well. So I think they were connected, and they were literally happening like one after another. Like one was from 7 to 9 and the other one was from like 9 till like till late. And it's kind of random that it was on a Sunday night, but it was very busy, it was very popular. There was a lot of like people that I was, if you think of like cool people and what a cool person looks like, there was a lot of those in both of the venues. And we saw some people at one that were in the other as well. And yeah, so it was a kind of very interesting experience. And then so the first one was fine, and then the second one we went there, and it was like a taco restaurant that was like, very like small, casual. Um, just literally they just had like the counter, and then they had like one table. You could sit at the counter, and then there was limited seats, but it was very, quick, like have a couple of tacos, leave kind of place. And they had like a secret Mexican like speakeasy bar through the back, and there was a separate queue for the bar and a queue for the restaurant, and we thought, oh, we'll just like go to the bar and just like then maybe grab some food afterwards. And so we were in the bar queue, we had to wait a little while, and then we went inside. And where we were sat, it was quite busy in there, and where we were sat there was a guy next to us who was on his own, and he was fairly young. He was like, late 20s, like 27. And he I just we just got talking, like briefly, like I'd asked for the Wi-Fi password, and he asked me what it was. And then I asked him, like what he was drinking, because we were trying to decide what to get. And and then in the end I realized, like, oh, obviously he's on his own, and I said to him, oh, if you're by yourself, like, you're welcome to come and join us, because he was sat next to us anyway, and we were like speaking to him. But it was my sister and I were sat like here and here, and then there was like an empty stool, and then this guy whose name is Jack. And so basically, so I just said to him, oh yeah, like feel free to like move over one, and you can like hang out with us, because we were chatting by that point anyway. And then we got speaking, and it was really lovely. Like, we just had a nice conversation. And one thing that I really appreciated and really enjoyed about speaking to Jack is like, and I think there's a few people who have this skill, and I think it's really special when they do, is that to, like, I'm sure you guys have experienced this, but put it in the chat if you have any examples, or if you're one of these people. But have you ever had conversations with people who literally make you feel like you could be saying anything, and they make you feel like you're, the most interesting person in the world? Or, just not even as extreme as that, but people who really take an interest and really seem quite like genuine, or like, when they ask you a question, you really feel like they actually really want to know the answer, or they're invested in what you have to say. Not that they're just waiting for their turn to talk, which unfortunately I think I'm one of those people, and I'm trying to get better at that. But yeah, anyway, so that was a really nice thing. And so the thing I really liked, we had like a nice conversation, and he was studying law at like Columbia, and he um decided to do a semester in Paris, because he felt like it was quite intense in the US in Colombia, and obviously here in Paris it's really chilled. So he thought, oh, let me like kind of do that briefly, have a bit of a change of scenery. And so he was like in Paris he's going to be there for 6 months or so. And even though he doesn't like speak the language, but obviously a lot of people do speak English, and he said he's made loads of friends who are kind of abroad, who are studying, from elsewhere in the world as well. So he basically, I'm just gonna have a sip of water, and if you guys need a reminder to hydrate, please do. Hey, I'm back. So yeah, I'm aware that obviously when I do these, it's a constant stream of me talking. So occasionally I have to take a breath, which I'll do now. I mean, actually, let's all do that together. Let's just close our eyes for a minute and just take a couple of deep breaths in and out, because I think we could all use that. And it's always nice to have a little reset. And sigh if you need to, just sigh out anything that, whether it's like tiredness, like negative energy, anything that's on your mind, just like let it go. Let's just like release it. That felt good. Okay, and then I'm gonna just take a couple of deep breaths in and out at my own pace. You guys should do the same, and then we'll continue story time. So yeah, I just did 3 deep breaths in and out, because They say three is the magic number. And I think when I started doing that, there was 44 meditators, and now there's 48. So for the four people that just joined, I've been obviously talking consistently for 35 minutes. So I just took a breather quite literally. I've never thought about what that phrase means until then. But yeah, that was quite literally taking a breather as far as I can see. So I was just telling a story about somebody that I met in Paris just this weekend. And yeah, so he just seemed very like polite and friendly, and for like also a young student, one of the things that I really respected, which this kind of says a lot about drinking culture in the world and in the UK, because I was like surprised and impressed by this. But he had basically got a soft drink like towards the end of the night, because he felt like he'd had enough to drink, and he didn't seem like out of control or anything. But I just thought it was really nice and like great to see someone having the kind of self-awareness and the self-regulation to be able to hit pause, or to be like, oh well, I've had enough to drink, like let me switch to something non-alcoholic, which should be the norm. And like frankly, that's how I operate, that's how people I'm close to operate. But I know a lot of people don't, and a lot of people really struggle to hit the off button or stop once they start drinking, which is sad, frankly. But yeah, it was really nice to see that, and my sister even commented on it, and she like thought it was like quite cool to see someone who's like young and a student thinking along those lines. So then we were leaving that place, so we hung out there, I chatted to him for like an hour or so, and then we were leaving. And we decided he'd eaten at the taco place beforehand, and we decided that we were going to get food afterwards. And so he said, oh, and so he left at the same time as us because he was going to head off, he had class the next day. And he was like, oh, he was like, I'll wait in the line with you, make sure that you guys get in okay, because when we left the speakeasy bar that was through the Mexican restaurant, we had to then queue outside again on the other side for so the queue for the bar was on this side, the queue for the Mexican place, the taco place, was on the other side of the door. And I've never seen like a Mexican taco restaurant with like two bouncers outside, but that was the case because obviously they had the bar through there and stuff. And these two guys obviously had like good energy. They're these bouncers, and they kind of obviously were regulating the queues and stuff. Not that it was that busy for a Sunday night, but still there were people waiting at any given point for the bar or for the restaurant. So yeah, so anyway, so then we were waiting in the line for like only for a couple of minutes, and Jack said, oh, I'll just wait with you and make sure that you guys get into the restaurant okay. And then he was gonna head off. And then we were getting to the front of the queue, and he said, oh, if it's okay with you guys, I'd really love to buy you a plate of tacos, like just to say thank you for hanging out. And my sister and I were just so like and you can see it in my face probably, but we were so touched and so like floored by this gesture. And when I say floored, I mean like FLOORED, not floored like, you know, damaged or whatever. But we were really we were really grateful. We felt really positively about it. And it was just such a lovely thing where, someone that we don't know um has just done such a kind thing out of nowhere for no reason. And I sound really surprised by it, but and obviously I've been in situations before where other people have shown kindness or things like that, but I think in this context, because I just really didn't expect it, it really meant a lot, and it really, I guess, like landed really well with us. And it meant, yeah, it really meant a lot. And I just thought the serendipity of that, when I talk about serendipity, this was kind of the thing that made me think, oh, I want to do this session. But then other things have happened since then that are also interesting to comment on. So the fact in that situation, and in that kind of that I've just lost my train of thought. I just got distracted by a different serendipitous thing I was going to say. um but hi to everyone that has just joined. Feel free to say hello in the chat. And if you have any examples of serendipity in your own life, or any serendipity you'd like to invite in, please do share. So yeah, I was just saying that so we were really touched by this like very, very kind, very generous gesture, right? And it made me just think, like, I want to do things like that in the world. I want to make other people feel that way, ideally. And so I was thinking about that, and I was like, I will pay that gesture forward and I will do something similar. And it's not that I don't, because actually, as it stands, I do that, but I would say more for people that I know than complete strangers. However, there's been a couple of times where I have done a similar thing. So, for example, at one point I was in a kind of session at at a place I go to quite often, like a community, and they would, I think it was around like astrology or something like that. It was something kind of esoteric and to do with like tarot or crystals or horoscopes. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I do remember that one girl asked for advice on a specific situation or a specific issue, and she was told that she should get something of a specific crystal and maybe like wear that as like a necklace or whatever. And I I don't know why, but I just felt compelled to like buy that for her. And I said to her afterwards, I said, "Oh, like, take my details. Like, I'd love to like get that necklace or that like crystal necklace for you." I just felt like it was something that crossed my mind as like a kind thing to do, and I'd love to do that for you if you're comfortable with it. And so yeah, so I did. So I ordered it for her, and yeah, it got delivered to her. And that was completely random. Like, I don't know where that came from or why I felt called to do that, but I did. And I guess, like, it's a reminder that more stuff like that, we can do things like that, or also we can invite people doing things like that for us in and not blocking those blessings. So there was another example where I was in a jewelry shop yesterday in Paris, and there were two sisters in there, although I thought they were friends. And one of them, they were trying on some earrings or some jewelry, and one of them really loved something, and the other one said, "Oh, I'm going to buy that for you." And the one who was going to be bought the thing said, "No, no, I can't let you do that, blah blah." And I was chatting to them, and I said, "Oh, let your friend buy you the thing. She really wants to, and you can get her something, or you can like, pay it forward or return the favor like in another way. But clearly, like she really wants to do that for you. Like let her, be in receiving energy." And she was like, "Yeah, no, it's my sister. So actually, yeah, I don't have to even feel bad about it." So it was really sweet. But it's that thing of, when people like offer us gifts or blessings, I think there sometimes is, the question of like discernment, and it depends who it is and what the situation is, and whether there are strings attached, or if you feel comfortable or not. But we've talked before about, being in receiving energy, feeling like you are worthy of those things, and um etc. So I just thought that was like an interesting point around being open to things. And when people give us these gifts or try to, do we let them, or do we sometimes say no? Because I think in other times, myself or other people that I know, if someone offered to buy them a plate of tacos, as Jack very kindly did on Saturday, there's a lot of people that would have been like, "No, no, I can't let you do that." But what we've got to remember is also, when we do nice things for other people and when people let us do nice things for them, we also feel good. So it's not just about us and our gifts. It's like, let someone else shine their light if that's what they would like to do and that's what they're choosing to, provided you're safe and comfortable and there isn't another reason that it doesn't sit right for you or feel right to you. A lot of the time it's just we feel like guilt or we feel bad, whereas actually we should be open to letting people do nice things for us, um, within reason, and if we feel like comfortable and safe to do so. So that was kind of the one thing that happened that I said, around the serendipitous interaction. And oh, actually, I do remember what I was going to say when I got off track. So that whole bar was full of people who were in groups or with someone else, and we just happened to be sat next to the one person who was on their own. And I thought that was so interesting because he could have been sat next to anyone else. And I'm sure he was sat next to other people before we got there that night who probably didn't, wouldn't have necessarily like had a chat and invited him to join them. And so I think it is a really like serendipitous thing that that's who we were sat next to. And the fact that we got talking and then he did this kind thing. And for those of you who missed it, basically, this person that we met in a bar that we were sat at, who was on his own, he was a kind of studying abroad in Paris from Columbia University. He was studying law, and he was in this bar by himself. And my sister and I were sat next to him, and we got talking to him and invited him to like join us briefly because he was by himself. And then when we were leaving, the bar that we were in is like attached to a Mexican taco place, and he'd already had dinner there before, and he was heading home, and we were going to go into the restaurant. And he basically said, "Oh, I'd love to buy you guys a plate of tacos, like just to say thank you for like hanging out and being kind and stuff." And it was just such a sweet thing to do. It was really nice and really thoughtful. And we really appreciated it. And then the other thing that happened actually is that when we were in that restaurant as well, one of the staff members was really kind to us as well, and it was a similar energy. It felt like, I don't know what it was about that day or that night or kind of us on this trip, but they also just for absolute no reason gave us like one of the things that we ordered for free, and like just even when he gave the bill, he was like, "Oh, I've just charged you for like these two things, not the other third thing." So that was really sweet as well. So yeah, it was quite a lovely, like, sort of heartwarming experience. And we never planned to go to this place. It was literally because someone that we'd met the day before told us about this pop-up. So it's funny how things work out, and the kind of like is it a halo effect or like a knock-on effect, whatever the wording is. But yeah, it was kind of a really lovely, like, serendipitous, I would say, sort of moment and situation. However, this is where things get dark. I'm going to give you guys a little spoiler, because what happened next, the very next day, I feel was a direct result of something nice happening, and Jack being generous with the tacos. So, and I might recap that for anyone that joined since, because we've got 64 people here, and I know we started out with a lot less. But because of that situation, have any of you had any experiences where like you've had kindness from a stranger which you didn't expect, or anything similar? Like, please do share in the chat, because it gives me a chance to have a breather when you guys interact as well. So I'd really appreciate that. Or anything nice that you guys have done for anybody, for a stranger or for someone that you didn't know very much. Um, and I think it's nice to share these stories and, just remind yourself of like things that you've done, or of things that you've had happen with you. So please do share. Um, and I'm gonna just have a little breath. One thing that I would love to do is learn how to speak a little bit slower, and also come up for air in between, which I think I've done once already during this session. But I never normally just stop and take a couple of deep breaths. But I think most of us could probably use that reminder. And another thing, if I am speaking really fast and you need me to slow down at any point, please do tell me, because I know that sometimes when I'm speaking to people, particularly people from kind of other countries or from around the world, I do speak very fast and very quickly, and I possibly could enunciate better. So, I want to be easy to understand for all of you, and not like a steam train, which I often can be. So essentially, after this thing happened, the nice thing, I thought, oh, I want to do nice things for other people. I want to kind of, be kind as well, the same way that Jack had been. And so the next day, we was that I can't remember what night that was on. I think it was Monday. Um, yeah, the next day we went to a few other places, did a bit of like, sightseeing type things. And um well, actually, there's a separate little nicer story before I go to like the other thing. And this story that I'm going to tell you is not a horrible story, but it's not unsettling either. But it's one of those things where, everything has like two sides, and it's a little bit it's like not as nice as the Taco Jack story. So I had many, many years ago, like more than 10 years ago, had bought a wallet in what I thought was the gift shop of the Louvre Museum, but I didn't really recall where. Like, it was ages ago. I just knew that I got it at the Louvre like gift shop. That's kind of all I really remembered and knew. And then I lost it probably like 5 or 6 years ago, and I lost it on a train, and I was quite like disappointed and upset about it because I absolutely loved that purse. It was like a little blue leather wallet, and it wasn't terribly expensive, but it had a little, it was like perfect to fit in pockets and stuff. It was quite small, but it had inside a little zip pocket that also like a little coin thing inside it. But it was very like slim, very good quality, just like soft leather. Just it was lovely. It was like brilliant. And also I have a bit of a kind of, guilt or like attachment to losing things. I feel really bad. And I think that's like a childhood thing where, I was always taught to like look after my things and be really careful. And if you lose something, you shouldn't ever like lose anything. You shouldn't ever like break anything. And so I think there's a lot of like guilt around that kind of thing. So even, and it's interesting, I've had it where, with one of my exes, for example, I broke a glass in my own house, one of my own glasses. And I was like apologizing profusely and being like, oh, like, I felt really bad and really guilty. And he was just like, hey, like, glass breaks, like, it's not a big deal, like, everything's fine. But for me, I was like quite shaken because of the fact that, presumably as a kid, I would have been like told off or like gotten in trouble about it. And it's funny how those things still stick with us. And I guess like the trauma or the like the kind of what's the word? Like, what is the word that I'm looking for? Conditioning kind of stays there. The messages, the conditioning. And so yeah, I felt guilty about this purse that I lost. I felt really bad. And it was partly because it was a really lovely purse, and it was just kind of functionally really great, and that was part of it, but also it was partly just the guilt of like losing something. And I looked online like everywhere to try and find something similar, and I couldn't really find anything that was like identical. I managed to find one that was very similar, that was like a little bit more expensive than the one I'd got, because the one I got was like 20 euros or something, I think. And I managed to get one that looked almost identical. It was unfortunately a little bit bigger, and it had the pocket bit inside, but it didn't have the zip on the inside, which is the part that I really liked. But I bought that. I looked for ages, honestly, to try and find something that was like as similar as possible. And I found it. I bought that, and then I went to I went to the Louvre, like just to the outside, and to like see the kind of, my sister wanted to see like the pyramid things. It's like it has like glass pyramids outside. I don't know if any of you know what I'm talking about. And I thought, oh, let's try and go to the gift shop. So I asked a member of staff, I was like, oh, how do you get to the gift shop? Because there was massive queues to actually go inside the main like gallery and stuff. And so um she was like, oh, walk all the way down like to this bit, and then there's a statue there, and you can go down these steps. And so I thought, and it was the Louvre is massive. For anyone who doesn't know, it's like, so we followed these instructions, walked quite a while to get to where the gift shop is, walked down these stairs, and then it turns out it's not just like a gift shop; it's basically like a mini like shopping mall. And I asked one of the security guards, like, oh, where's the gift shop? And he was like, oh, there's a couple of shops like down there where you can get some like souvenirs or some Louvre stuff. But there wasn't a kind of clear gift shop. But the first shop that we passed, it was like a shop that's a bit like a Ryman's or W.H. Smith. Like it was like a stationery store basically, or a Waterstones. But I saw that they had some wallets and purses in the window, and something about it just felt familiar. I just kind of felt like, oh, maybe this is the shop that I got it in, or something like that. It kind of just rang a bell a bit, and I don't know if that's just because there was like wallets and purses in the window. Anyway, I went in and I looked at all of the purses and wallets that they had, and I found what I'm pretty sure is the same one, which I've got right here, and it was from a shop called Delphonics. And I thought at the time previously, I'm going to open it and show you, but I thought at the time that I'd spent a lot more on it. I thought I'd spent like 40, 50 euros. Um, but actually it was 20 euros. And even and like, well, it was 20 euros when I bought it this time, so it must have been even cheaper then. But like, this is the purse. It's like very, it's very small and very sort of just dainty, and it's a Japanese brand called, I think it's called like Matsuke or something like that. I don't know, but I looked it up online. I couldn't find it anywhere. But like, that's the inside. So it's got a very cute little zip coin purse inside, which I honestly, I wish I'd bought a few of them because I absolutely loved it. And yeah, it's like a Japanese store, I think, and a Japanese brand. And I was just so thrilled to have found the same wallet that I lost all those years ago. And obviously, when I had that one, I lost the cards and everything that was in it. But yeah, I can't tell you how, I bought this like 10 years ago, and I managed to find more than 10 years ago, and I managed to find the same thing in the same place, in the first shop that I went into in that mall. So that was a really cool thing, and I was very happy about that. And that's where I said, certain things will come full circle. Like, we're talking about me kind of finding a wallet, or like not finding a wallet, but looking through like the wallet I use for travel, and then I found this one in that shop, which I was thrilled about. So that was one of the kind of themes. I don't know if that's like serendipity specifically, but I think, very easily, like more than 12 years later, could have just not been there. Um, so yeah, that was like a really lovely, positive, nice thing. And then because I lost all the cards and all the money and everything else that was in that wallet at the time, but I didn't, obviously I could replace most of them, but I couldn't replace that wallet. And I did try to, and I ended up getting something that is like, very clearly like made in a factory. And whereas this does feel like handmade and hand stitched, and you can see because there's very slight sort of differences in the way it's cut and the kind of material and stuff when I looked at the different ones they had. And then reminder to have a sip of water for anyone who needs it, or to take a breath. Um, yeah, so, and we have 72 meditators here now. So who has joined since I last checked in? Does anybody want to say hello and share where they are or where they're from, or give me any feedback about how I'm doing, or how you're enjoying story time? Because we haven't got to the most surprising story yet. Although I don't know how surprising it'll be to you guys, but it was for me. Oh, hi Pilar, lovely to meet you from Los Angeles. Lovely. Yeah, I've just been sharing some stories. For anybody who has missed this, you can catch up. There will be a replay on YouTube, and there's also other previous sessions where we talk about other themes within kind of, community connections, relationships, and how we kind of relate to one another as humans. And for anybody who doesn't know me, I'd love a follow on Insight Timer, and also you can find my YouTube channel in my link tree and follow me there as well. That'd be really appreciated. And I'm working on getting some kind of shorter content on that channel too. So, easy little snackable insights or tips or things that I've said that have been, somewhat interesting and stood out from the longer lives. And if anyone here is in a position or would like to support me with a monetary donation, I'd really appreciate that. I went through redundancy in the last few months, and so this is currently my main source of income. But also, obviously, following me and sharing my sessions and my channels with people who you think could benefit or find it interesting is a great way to support if you're not in a position for a donation. But if you are, every little helps. So even the lowest donation amount, I think is like 1.99. So yeah, if you would like to support me and show gratitude, um, and give me support to continue doing my sort of work on Insight Timer and my live sessions, that would be fantastic. So the final kind of, I guess, story that we were going to come on to, and was that, so for those of you who've just joined, a stranger did like a nice kind thing for me in Paris recently for my sister and I. And so if anyone wants to share like other stories they have of nice or kind things that you've done for a stranger that have made you feel good, or any stories that you have of someone doing something nice for you that really surprised you or meant a lot to you, like ideally strangers or people you don't know very well, something that felt serendipitous, or any other moments of serendipity, please share that in the chat. Um, So I was saying that after this happened on Saturday night, we very much, well, I came away with the feeling that I wanted to do more of that sort of thing for other people, and be kind and be kind of helpful, and I guess shine my light where possible. And we were we were like sort of, in various like stores and doing some sightseeing. I think this was on Monday, if I'm not wrong. And we were leaving a shop, and there was like the craziest, most intense, insane rainfall, to the point where we had to literally like just walk and hang out outside of another shop where it's like covered at the top. And the shop was closed, but we were kind of just in the, underneath the sort of awning or whatever. But the rain was insane. It was like coming down in sheets. Like, even looking at the floor was like, there was like an inch layer of water like across the whole pavement because of how heavily it was raining. And so we had umbrellas, but like the umbrellas weren't going to help us. We would have still gotten soaked from kind of our toes to our knees. And the rain was coming in like diagonal sheets as well. So we just kind of waited there. We called an Uber and we thought, oh, we'll just get an Uber to the hotel and we'll go for dinner somewhere around there. And that seemed like the smartest move. And so we're waiting for this Uber, and a couple of other people just come under the same like shelter as us. We get talking to this really sweet couple next to us. They seemed quite young. They were visiting from like the Dominican Republic, and then they were like saying that they have like a 4-minute walk to the restaurant they're going to for dinner, but they kind of didn't want to brave it in this rain, so they just ducked under the sort of cover or shade, whatever. Shade, that's the wrong one, under the like shop front thing that we did. And then when the rain slowed down a bit, they decided to then try and make it and go for dinner. And we were still waiting for our Uber, which we'd called like a while ago, but we just thought this rain is, even when it had stopped previously, it started again very suddenly. So we thought we're not going to take the risk, and we're just going to wait and just go like near to the hotel and sort of stay dry, because I only had one pair of trainers with me, and I thought if these get soaked, they're not going to dry overnight, and then I'm going to have to wear wet trainers tomorrow. So that was the main thing. And this guy came up to us, and when I tell people this story now, people are like, "Oh, that sounds like a scam," immediately. But at the time, I didn't feel that was the case, and I'm not naive and I'm not stupid. Um, but I very much, it felt like genuine, and my intuition told me that I need to help this person. So this guy came up to us. He was like middle aged, sort of. He had a kind of international accent, but I didn't know specifically from where. And he kind of looked, he was relatively like, well dressed, but sort of just looked like someone who would be on holiday, or tourist. Like, he had like a waterproof rain jacket on. He was wearing like Asics trainers, which my sister noticed, I didn't. um and he basically said that he was by the Eiffel Tower with his wife and daughters, and his wife put their bags down for like 2 seconds to take a picture, and the bags got snatched. And I was like, obviously I felt really bad for him, and I was like, oh, that's awful. And he said he's just been to the Canadian embassy, and that they're staying at a hotel near Euro Disney, and the kind of only way to get back is like to get a train there. And he said that he basically needs like just 35 euros to get the train back, and that he can like pay me back tomorrow, when he has his like stuff sorted out, and that he'll give us like a kilo of chocolate or something, like as a thank you. And he told us that he works for UBS, and that and that, like, yeah, he basically seemed sort of trustworthy, and I believed what he was saying. And also, he was walking around like in the rain, and he said that he'd even just been to the shop, and he'd even gone back to try and see if they would like take back some groceries that he bought, and they wouldn't let him. um so I don't know, I can't remember all the details, but ultimately my feeling just was that, oh, this person did a nice thing for us yesterday, like a different person, for those of you who've just joined. And I just feel like I want to be kind, and I want to like help someone as well if I can. And so I basically um felt like that was the right thing to do. In my heart and in my intuition, I felt like it was the right thing. So I had 25 euros cash on me and I gave it to him. And he said, and he was really grateful and really appreciative. And he said, I'm really sorry to, like, I know you've been so generous. I'm really sorry to kind of, ask for more. But is there any chance you can help me with a couple more euros so that I don't have to like humiliate myself and, like already I don't have to humiliate myself further and ask other people for money. Um, and I just said no. Like I said, I don't have any cards on me. And actually, that wasn't true. I did have cards with me, but I thought I'm not going to a cash point with a stranger. We were waiting for an Uber. And also, at that point, I just thought, I've given him 25 euros. I feel like that's quite generous and that is enough. Um, and then I got in the Uber and I felt, hi, Catherine. I've just seen you pop up. I just saw your picture. So guys, anybody that doesn't know Catherine Ramati, and Catherine, I was talking about you not that long ago about your trip to Paris. Um, so yeah. Um, yeah, so anybody who doesn't know Catherine, give her a follow. She's lovely, and you see the like light and joy that just came across my face when I was talking about her. That is what Catherine's sessions and the community on her sessions and her energy will do for you. She was one of my kind of first like sort of teachers on Insight Timer that I used to go to lives with, and she was like one of the people that made me feel the most sort of welcome and I guess seen and appreciated when I was on the other side of, just going to sessions and not being a teacher myself. So, yeah, I was telling this story, Catherine. I don't know if you just heard the story about this like, and by the way, this guy said he was from Canada, from Toronto, and he didn't sound necessarily like he had a Canadian accent, but I thought, do you know what, people who work in finance kind of travel all over, and um, whatever. I didn't really think that deeply about it, but I did ask him where his wife and children were, and he said, "Oh, I've left them waiting at this place." He named a French place that I didn't know, and he said so that they didn't get wet in the rain. And yeah, I just thought because he came to us and he was like, "Do you guys speak English?" And I was like, "Yeah," and he was like, "Thank God," and he seemed really like that was the kind of I guess the first thing, and obviously, you know, this kind of thing, and so basically, we gave him the money, he like went away, and then we got in the taxi and I rang my mum and I said to her, I was like, I'm not sure if it was genuine or not or whatever, but I just felt like that was the right thing to do. And she was like, yeah, and it's not like it was a lot of money, etc. But there's something about it that still didn't quite sit right with me. I still had a bit of a feeling or fear, I'm not sure, about like, what if I just got scammed basically, right? And then later that night, I Googled it. I just Googled the phrase because you can Google anything these days and you can literally get like information pop up. So I Googled like Paris man saying he was robbed, asking for money, like UBS, whatever. And literally the same thing like came up. But someone had said that the man said he was Swiss and he also mentioned the kilo of chocolate. Um, and they said it happened to them twice with like two different people, but they also mentioned UBS weirdly. So I thought that was interesting and strange. And that's when I realized, and he took my details, like, because he was like, "Oh, can I take your details to pay you back?" And I wrote down my contact details, like, on the back of a card. And then I realized, like, obviously at that point, I was like, "Yeah, I'm almost certain it's a scam." But it really sucked because part of me felt like, and I felt so much like inner conflict about it because part of me felt like, well, you know, I did what I felt was right in the moment. I did what was right by me and by my like intuition and my heart. But at the same time, I also don't like the thought or the idea that I was like manipulated or like lied to. And then another part of me also thought that, well, clearly if he's like out here in the rain, like doing this, even if it is like a lie and a scam, like presumably he needs the money and like I hope that it helps him in some way, shape, or form. Not that I agree with it and I don't think it's like totally cool and fine, but I just have to try and look at the positives. But one of the things that makes me feel a little bit like sad about it is that will this potentially stop me from helping other people in future? Will I be more hesitant or more discerning? Or, will it like if somebody asks me for help in the future, will I be more hesitant and will I feel like I have to hold back? Hi, friendy. Lovely to see you here. I'm not sure if I've seen or met you before. From Indonesia. I've been to Bali, but not to the rest of Indonesia. I don't know how much you've joined, how long ago you joined, or how much you've missed. But if anyone else wants to just drop in and say hello, that would be fab, and we can have a little like chat and do a little like Q&A at the end. Ah, Ubud, cool. So yeah, I've been there. Um, so yeah, so that was kind of the story around that. And the other thing that sort of struck me about that situation is it's interesting because those of you who've been to my sessions before, and send up some hearts if you know what I'm talking about. But one thing I talk about a lot is the exchange rate. So what in my opinion the exchange rate is I use this term for everything now. So obviously everything, any situation has pros and cons. And if you, for example, want to get up early and go to the gym and be productive and like, get that out the way, the exchange rate there is you're losing a bit of sleep, that the nice lie-in that you could have, but it's like which of those things is more worth it to you. So I'll give you another example. For this trip that we took to Paris, we had to hi Anand, we had to we would have had to get a train. Our original train was booked for like 8 a.m., which would mean that I would have had to leave my house at 6 a.m. to get to the Eurostar for like 7, and I would have had to wake up at 5 a.m. basically. And I'm not an early bird, so I go to bed, which I'm trying to do better with, but I go to bed really late and I wake up late. And so, and getting enough sleep, as everybody knows, and Catherine will tell you on her sessions, is so important. And so at that point, I thought, do you know what? I need to change the train to later. I can't, especially when the retreat got cancelled. And I thought I need 8 hours of sleep, otherwise I'm not going to be doing particularly well in terms of like routine, and just being um in a good headspace and being able to actually like enjoy myself, or just like operate sort of well. So I changed the train, and we had to pay extra for that, unfortunately, and it was more than what we'd originally paid for the trains because we got a good price on the way out. And but I just thought, do you know what? The exchange rate there is worth it, because actually the 3 hours extra sleep I'll be able to have is is so much more valuable to me than any amount of money. Um, so yeah, that's what I talk about when I say about the exchange rate. And in this situation, the story that I was telling you, the exchange rate here, which is kind of a funny slash like transactional way of looking at it, but also it's kind of a way of finding a light at the end of the tunnel, right? Is that okay? I got scammed potentially, but if I was going to get robbed or scammed, I feel like this is one of the kind of nicer, more innocuous ways for it to happen. And the kind of crux of it is like the gift in this, or the exchange rate, is that I got to feel like I'm a nice person and that I did a good, nice thing for someone else. And that is actually, in my view, really positive and like a nice thing. Oh, hi, Anna. Thank you so much for the donation. I really appreciate that. That's very kind of you. And if anyone else here is feeling similarly generous or wants to help me recoup the 25 euros that I got scammed out of, any donations are welcome. Um, but yes, I mean, for those of you who've joined and just missed it, basically, I gave money in Paris to somebody who I felt was genuine and needed help, and then sort of have realized since that it was probably a scam. And what I've been talking about is the gift of, the fact that I kind of take some comfort or some solace in the fact that I am someone who, and I'm kind of proud of the fact that I am someone who is open to helping people when they need it and if I have the capacity to do so. And there's obviously a difficult thing where partly I feel like, oh, was I naive? Could I, because I know I'm not stupid, and I'm not like easily manipulated. But I think it was just, when I guess we all have kind of a human nature within us, which is to kind of help people, or when if you hear the kind of sob story or whatever, you do feel like sympathy, or tugging at your heartstrings, so to speak. And yeah, I kind of not I don't want to say fell prey to it, because even after that situation, I don't feel like, oh, I was a victim. I just feel a bit like, oh, okay, like that clearly the situation wasn't what I thought it was. But as I said, um, yeah, exactly. Yeah, JG just said we have scammers here, and they told us to stop giving cash. Instead, you can give food. Yeah, so see, ordinarily that's what I do. So if there's like homeless people around, I will typically give them food, or I'll ask them, can I buy you something from the shop? And that's what my mum has always taught me to do, because she said, it's better not to give them cash because you don't know if they're going to use it for like alcohol or drugs, but like get them some food if you want to get them some food. Or the other thing I do is, on airplanes or hotels, when you get like mini toiletries, or when you get like socks or things like that, that's really useful to give them as well. And that's what I've got a friend who like volunteers with homeless charities, and she said those are the things that are quite useful. So, and also when you give food, it's better to give kind of things that are like maybe softer, because um sometimes they don't have the best like dental sort of care. So they might not be able to have, like, let's say an apple or things that are harder to eat always. So anyway, the situation that I was in, obviously this guy said, and he seemed like, a successful, like medium well dressed person, and he said he worked for UBS, and obviously that his like everything had been stolen, and that he'd just been like robbed by the Eiffel Tower, and that he just needed 35 euros to be able to get the train back to the hotel he was staying at with his family near Euro Disney. And so yeah, I felt like that was the right thing to do, and I felt like, and also the other part of it is that, someone, it seemed like someone who was on a similar, like there was a kind of connection there, in the sense of, oh, he was also a tourist like visiting Paris, and oh, he's also like a working professional, etc. And like um someone who, Annan, I don't know if you meant to donate twice, but I think your donation just came through again. So I'll drop you a message and we'll just check that that wasn't an error. But otherwise, I think you can reach out to Insight Timer support. But if you are just being super generous and giving me two donations, that is so kind of you, and I really, really appreciate it. Um, but yeah, so I think what I kind of felt like, oh, this is somebody who's, similar to me in a way. And if I was in this situation, oh, Anna, that's so kind of you. Really appreciate it. And yeah, so I just felt like it's, if I was in that position, like I would want someone to help me. And I think that's kind of, it's, and I'm sure that there's a method to how these things happen, because like I've never really been scammed before. I'd like to think that, and the thing is, I'd like to think that I'm quite savvy. I'd like to think I'm sensible, and it just goes to show that like anyone can be susceptible to these kinds of things. And overall, and the thing that I was saying in terms of like themes and things coming full circle is, obviously before I went on this trip, I found, like, when I have a wallet that I use when I'm traveling, and I keep like dollars or euros or whatever in there, and usually it's just like maybe 5 or 10 euros or $5 or $10. And I actually had a significant amount of euros. I had like over 100 euros that, and actually, yeah, I think I had 125 euros, to be honest, something like that, that I'd forgotten about because it had been more than a year since I'd been anywhere in Europe. And I was so grateful when I found that before I went on the trip, and I thought, oh, this is perfect. I've just gone through redundancy. It means I'm not having to spend out of my bank account or my card or whatever. I've just got some extra cash I can use. And I kind of just thought that, oh, well, this was $125 that I'd kind of not even realized that I had, not dollars, euros, that I didn't realize that I didn't even have. And um, okay, fine, I gave 25 euros of this to this guy who obviously was scamming me, but at the same time, like, if that the and this is the funny thing I was saying, like the exchange rate here is that I get to feel like I'm a like nice person. um i'm so i'm so I'm so grateful for your donations, Anna, and that's really, really generous of you. So I always say like three is one of my favorite numbers, 3, 7, and 21. And Annan's just made like three donations, which is very sweet. Um, And I really appreciate that. That's going in my gratitude journal tonight. Really appreciate the kindness. But yeah, and so Lynn, you said that it's disappointing that people are dishonest. We're blessed to have extra to give it. Exactly. And the thing is for me as well, like it's not that I necessarily had extra to give, but it's like typically if I see like a fundraiser or if I see something where it feels important to me, like if I see something for like a children's cancer charity, I will always feel like I want to give a small amount, or I always do give where I can. And obviously having like gone through redundancy and also just as I mentioned, some of you might have missed this, but I was meant to go on Dr. Joe Dispenza's retreat previous Anna, thank you so much again. That's really kind of you. I was meant to go on Dr. Joe Dispenza's retreat on the weekend in Paris, which my mum had very kindly wanted my sister and I to go on, and she'd booked that for us. And it got cancelled very last minute because the French authorities, or the French like medical authorities, had concerns about his kind of health like claims, or the way his teachings basically, because he teaches people how to kind of heal themselves. Lynn, thank you so much. That's so sweet of you. I really appreciate the support. And like, see, genuinely, I do really feel very blessed to be here and to be with all of you. And I will also share a little thing about why I thought I might not be able to do a session this week. So yeah, basically, so I was meant to go on this retreat, and then I would have been in session all day every day, and obviously not spending that much or like doing anything in Paris, because obviously I would have been busy like actually like meditating and doing the and listening and stuff. And I yeah, I basically um so I went to Paris, like, unfortunately, not unfortunately, like it ended up being just a trip, which means that when you're just in a city, obviously there are free things you can do. You can just walk around and look at the sights and stuff, but overall you end up spending money that, let's say, if you were in session in a conference, like not in a conference, but like in a event venue the whole time, just sat listening, you wouldn't like be spending on anything. And obviously like hot drinks and stuff would have been included there. And so it was just interesting how, like, I found that I was really grateful to have found that money before I went, because I thought, oh, this is really helpful, where I've just where, let's say, I'm trying to keep my expenses down after redundancy and stuff. And so for me, giving this random stranger 25 euros was like, it wasn't a small amount, it wasn't nothing to me. And also, but then the other way of looking at it is energy is money, like energy comes and goes. So one thing that Catherine Ramati, who I think she might still be here, yeah, she is still here. She's one of my like OG fave teachers on Insight Timer, and she always says that when you give, you create a vacuum for that energy to come back to you. And I really do believe that you get back what you put out. And so just look at this session and all of you spending your time with me and your kind of generosity. And Annan, thank you again. I really appreciate it. I've never been in a session where someone has donated multiple times, so I really appreciate that. That's very kind of you. And yeah, thank you to Lynn as well. So if anyone isn't in a position to, if you are in a position to donate and you'd like to give me a bit of support, it's always very welcome and very much appreciated. However, if you are not in a position to, I would really appreciate you following me on here and also giving me a follow on my YouTube channel. And so if you've only joined this kind of later and you want to know what the other stories that led up to this scam were, or me being scammed, please go on my link tree. You can find my YouTube on there. You can also find other ways to support me and sort of donate via that as well, because I know Apple takes like 30% of donations made via Apple devices. So yeah, I thank you again, Anna, and thank you, JG. All of you are so sweet. I really appreciate it. Um, and where I can't remember where I was. I'm kind of honestly overwhelmed by the kind of kindness and generosity. And I'm like, obviously, I'm literally beaming. So the thing I was going to say actually was that I thought I wouldn't be able to do a session this week because, and this seems like a good time, so maybe I'll try and do another one around now. But I'm volunteering for this community sort of project, and it's a show, and it's in London. So if anyone is interested in doing any kind of cool, creative, like fun volunteering in London, please let me know, and I can put you in touch and tell you more information. And also similarly, if anyone ever has any like questions or anything that I can support you on, please like put it in the chat. And we've had sessions before where people have talked about like, you know, where they've lost touch with a friend, and or a friend's just kind of ghosted them, or other situations where they felt like taken for granted or things like that. um, Thank you, Anna. I'm not sure if your repeated donations are intentional or accidental, but I really appreciate it. But in case it is like an error from Insight Timer, please do get in touch with their customer service team. But if not, then like that's super cool of you and really kind. But yeah, as I said, there are other ways to support me because Insight Timer does take a cut. Not Insight Timer, Apple, sorry. Apple takes a cut of the donations on here. Ah, so yeah, there's been other people that kind of do also donate to me via like there's more info on my link tree via like PayPal and things. Um, so yeah, I have, so this project that I'm doing, I'm basically, it's got a really funny name, and I say this every show, just every like live session, because it's just really funny. It's called You Bum Bum Train, and it is impossible to get tickets. So the last lot of tickets that went out, they had 40,000 people enter the ballot, and I think like only a certain number of people kind of got tickets. So a lot of people end up volunteering, and the whole show is based around like volunteers. And there's lots of behind the scenes stuff that you can do, but also stuff in the show. And you can volunteer like as much or as little time as you'd like. But right now we're in the kind of busy pre-production phase, in the, yeah, I guess production phases. And this is a completely like new thing for me. And obviously because I'm not working at the moment after the redundancy, I've got the free time and the capacity um to kind of just try something new, learn a lot, and just kind of experience like doing something that's more kind of purpose led, and not having to worry about kind of, you know, at the moment at least, I'm going to be focusing on this and my Insight Timer sessions, and just trying to kind of, you know, be of service more. And they have they have kind of meetings. So I got back from Paris last night and I'm absolutely exhausted because I still am a bit like sleep deprived from the uncomfortable hotel. It was, and I said, and for those of you who missed this earlier, like I still even laughed at that and managed to find like the positive. You know, I said to my sister jokingly, I was like, why do these beds feel like it's a punishment rather than something that we've paid for? Because I said this before, like the beds were smaller than single beds, and they were like sloping, and this was like a 4-star hotel, and for some reason my bed was like sloping, so I've slept the whole last like 4 nights at, at an angle, like imagine this in my body like this basically, very slightly, but you feel it, you notice it, right? um and so then tonight I've got a big meeting for this show that I'm doing, and the like the kind of production stuff for that, and then I've got some training tomorrow for like timing and simulation training, which is to do with basically the show is like so specifically timed because each person that goes through the show, they're a passenger and they go through like one scene at a time. So if you manage to get a ticket to this show, you go through the whole experience by yourself. So let's say there's like 10 scenes, there's more than that, but like let's say hypothetically there's 10 scenes in 10 different rooms, and you go through one at a time, and you're in one for like a minute, and then the first passenger will move to see the second scene, and then the second passenger will come into the first scene. So none of the passengers ever meet, but everything has to be so precisely timed to make sure that everything's like moving along like clockwork, and you have like a margin of error of like 10 seconds. So there's a lot of like training that goes into that, and you have to have someone literally like timing your scene each time as well, on each scene for each night. So I'm learning so much, and there's training for that timing part of it tomorrow. So that'll be interesting. But it basically meant Thursday night's my usual night. And obviously I couldn't do that. So I was meant to do it tonight, and then I got told that I needed to be at a different meeting for that tonight. So I thought, you know, I want to still do one session a week, and it is important to me. So I thought I'll try this time out. And we don't have quite the same turnout as we do on the kind of later night ones. But if this time is good for people, I might even try and introduce like a second weekly session so that we have two. But thank you everybody for joining. I'm gonna kind of wrap up now because we've reached an hour and a half, and I've been talking for that whole time. But thank you to all of you for your donations. To JG, to Lynn, um, to Anand for the million donations. I really appreciate that. And I'm just checking I haven't missed anyone else. Um, and yeah, if anybody else would like to support Anand, not you, I feel like you've donated so much already and I really appreciate it. But if anyone would like to support me, you can make a donation here or also on my link tree. I've got a link to my PayPal. So that, you know, because Apple take like a 30% cut, I believe, or I think Apple and Android, I'm not sure which one. I don't know if it's both or if it's just Apple, but yeah, they take a cut. So that's another way to support me. And also, if you can't support me financially, if you give me a follow on Insight Timer, you know, share me with your friends, and also give me a follow on LinkedIn. But thank you for your time, everybody. And has anyone got any like closing remarks or anything that they want to share for me to end on? And if not, I have got a little thing that I will just read from because I like to do that usually. I'm just trying to find it. So, I tend to kind of have books with me when I do my lives, and then I turn to a random page usually and share what kind of comes up for the group. So this is the book that I've got today. It's the little book of, I think it's Likey. I don't know because I'm not Danish, but the pronunciation, if anyone can help me, please do. But it's the books to do with the Danish search for the world's happiest people. And it's written by the CEO of the Happiness Research Institute in Copenhagen. So I am gonna turn to the section on money because I feel like we've talked about this quite a lot today in terms of the like themes that we've covered. So, and I might come back to this book another day as well. So, I am just looking for like something that is short and sweet and that I can read it. Okay, right. Here we go. We got some gold. So this section is called Peak Stuff for Happiness. So it said if money and happiness were to describe their relationship on Facebook, it would read it's complicated. There is a correlation between income and happiness. Generally speaking, in richer countries, people are happier. The gross domestic product, the GDP per capita, a nation's wealth is one of the 6 factors that explain why people in some countries are happier than others. However, it's important to emphasize that the connection is likely to be the fact that being without money is a cause of unhappiness. It makes sense to focus on improving material conditions in impoverished societies. Higher household income generally signifies an improvement in the living conditions of the poor, and in turn, the happiness of the people. So when money means that we can put food on our table, have a roof over our heads, and support our children, money has the power to transform our misery into happiness. But when money is spent on a $1,000 I just said serendipity because that's one of the things that we've been talking about. And you know, when your mind is like primed for certain words and phrases. Okay. But when money is spent on $1,000 Serenity dog pond that lets your dog float away on a cloud like bed into a blissful state with calming color, changing light, relaxing and soothing music, Google it, it's a thing. This is written in brackets. You have definitely run out of stuff you can buy that will improve your happiness. In fact, not only did you reach peak stuff for happiness a while back, but you fell off the cliff and now your dog is taking a dump on the summit. Like most things, the more we have of something, the less happiness we derive from it. The first slice of cake, awesome. The fifth slice, not so good. Economists call this the law of diminishing marginal utility. That is one of the reasons why some countries and people get richer, but not happier. Another reason is that we adapt to new levels of wealth. In happiness research, we call this the hedonic treadmill. So that was kind of the thought and the little sharing and the read that I will end on. But yeah, I'm gonna sign off now. But yeah, 6 minutes over the hour and a half. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your generosity. All of you that donated, especially Anand with multiple donations, which genuinely has made me smile. And anyone else that wants to support, you can follow me on here. You can follow me on YouTube. And if you'd like to make a donation via this or PayPal, I'd appreciate it very much. Although on here, if you pay, I think it's via an Apple device, Apple takes 30%, which is a shame. But yeah. And thank you for your time, everybody. And I normally say goodnight because it's normally 10:30 p.m. when I end these things, but I'm gonna go and get ready to go to this meeting and do all the volunteering stuff. So have a good night, guys. Have a good rest of your evening or your day, depending on where you are in the world. And if you joined late, you can catch up on YouTube, and I'll put this up within the next like week or so. But you can also catch up on all my past sessions on YouTube as well, and I'll be putting some kind of short form content on there also. So thank you guys. Bye. Take care.